All right, let's pivot to Fred VanVleet. The Rockets have come back down to earth a bit from where they were, but I still think that they'll factor into the play-in race, which when we checked in on them last, I think is kind of what we said was their destiny. They've continued to defend their asses off. Their 108.3 defensive rating, second in the NBA, but the offense has gotten even worse. And considering that Fred VanVleet is kind of supposed to be the answer there, and yet, once again, the Rockets are kind of in the Raptors zone of how their team looks when you compare one end of the floor to the other. I think it's okay to say that Fred VanVleet is not an all-NBA caliber offensive engine that can lead you to a great offense by himself. He's also not making twos. He's at 39% from two-point range, but he's not turning the ball over either. He has good chemistry with Şengün. The money I kind of throw out the window, Chris. I don't really care how much they paid him because it's the Rockets and they were bad and none of their young guys are up for extensions or anything in the near future. None of the really good ones. So I guess Şengün is, but it's fine to have one. The money doesn't bother me. I just come back to the same thing that I've said before, which is we're starting to get to the point in the season where they're not so far ahead of everybody else in the West anymore that it feels less reasonable to sacrifice the development of some of these guys just to be 500.
I largely agree, but I also think VanVleet has helped Şengün. I really do think there's been a benefit there. I think if there's what you said is true, but I think there's still a lot of value in this from a leadership in the locker room perspective. I think a culture perspective for this team because that's just VanVleet's that kind of guy. And I think with Şengün, there's the two-man game and the leadership and everything in that partnership is, I think, very structurally key to what the Rockets are at their best. And I don't think you would necessarily have this exact kind of Şengün emergence, breakout, whatever you want to call it, if VanVleet is not the point guard on this team. I think that partnership at the core of this is a reason I still feel okay about this. You're right. The money is just, Fred, you got paid. Congratulations. All the money stuff is true. He'll be off the books by the time they have to make other decisions. That's just how this will work. But he gets paid in the short term, and I do think there's been a boost with Şengün because of VanVleet. And if they're running out of rookie point guard or Jalen Green is running a lot of the sets for this team, that just wouldn't be the exact same because the feel, the composure, the willingness to give up the ball at times, that's not there from the younger guys. It is there from VanVleet, and I think that has had a real benefit, at least on Şengün, who has been the most important player for this Rockets team this year, I would argue.
The other thing to remember with this VanVleet contract is that it's 2 years and basically like $84 million, really, because the last year also is a team option, which came out after all the initial news and makes it an even bigger no-brainer for Houston to me. But interesting number for you. Both VanVleet and Şengün on for Houston. 115 offensive rating, basically. Just VanVleet, no Şengün. 103 offensive rating, which is like awful. Just Şengün, no VanVleet. 126 offensive rating. So maybe this whole season for Houston has just been the Şengün breakout.
I think it kind of is. I think that's just what this is. I think all the other stuff is fun. I can certainly tell you, Brendon, they're coming to Cleveland soon, and I'm going to get Donovan Mitchell and Dylan Brooks in the same building again for the first time since last year. Pretty excited for whatever that's going to look like. But this is the Şengün breakout, and everything else is different gravy.
Well, so then how much different would it be if it was just Jalen Green running that
I think it
two-man
would be
game?
worse. Brendon, I think it would be worse. I just don't trust Jalen Green as a playmaker in that way. VanVleet, for the limitations, for the fact that he's not an elite offensive engine, the fact that this team is at best in the play-in probably, the fact that things are not quite as high as they were to start the year. And their offense is 21st. They're still 6th in net rating, 2nd in defense, cleaning the glass. I just don't think any of that's happening if you have someone who's not VanVleet. Or that type of veteran who is not quite an all-star, but really respected, really competent, an extension of the coach on the floor in a really true but cliche way. I just don't think that's happening.
What if they had gotten Monte Morris?
you get.
I know he's
maybe
been
it's
hurt,
like,
but like let's just pretend. Or
Yeah.
Tyus Jones.
maybe it's like 80% of what you got out of VanVleet. Like I don't think it's exact 1-to-1, but I think that's about as close as you could get without sacrificing the big structural picture.
And those guys are making like a quarter and a fifth of what VanVleet's making.
Yes, but
Just playing devil's
money.
advocate, I think it was a
Yeah.
fine signing, but as the season continues and VanVleet looks kind of human, I just think it's worth considering because Jalen Green is shooting 42% from the field, 34% from 3, 48% from 2. He's at worse than a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. It's almost actually like 1-to-1. Haven't really felt like he feels comfortable most nights when I watch them. It's a lot of spot up opportunities and second unit stuff with the second unit not having much other playmaking, so then he's kind of overburdened. And Jabari Smith, who I've talked about before, is doing hardly anything on offense.
Just two things I would say. Number one, VanVleet is playing 38 minutes a game, which is just like too many minutes. That's like
As
Nick
always.
Nurse is still. Yeah, that's Nick Nurse coaching him minutes. Maybe let's dial him back to like 35, maybe 34.
Well, they have no backup point guard. They have Aaron Holiday is like playing backup point for them. So what are they supposed to do?
Okay, but to your point, to agree with your devil's advocate point, maybe you get a couple extra minutes a game where Jalen Green has to just like learn some shit, and you learn something about Jalen Green. Like everything we're saying about Sengun is true, and we've learned a lot about him. I think we also just probably we're learning a little bit about Jalen Green and what Jalen Green is or is not. I mean, you can
you
can
don't
say
want to let him off
like,
the hook too much, right? And say it's all everything else's fault all the time. Like he has to play better.
He absolutely has to play better, and you just like at a certain point, you kind of just like are what you are. Like context does matter. I get all of that, but like to some degree, it's year 3. You kind of just like that's what you are at that given time, and that just might be what Jalen Green is, and VanVleet or otherwise. I think that like he might even be more inefficient to some degree if there's no veteran point guard next to him. You know what I mean? Like he might be taking 18 shots a game again, and the Rockets wouldn't be better if that were the case.
Yeah, he is. I think he's been a little better defensively, but other than that, it's hard to see a ton of growth from Jalen outside of just approaching the game as in a different type of role.